Hey, everybody, or maybe just you because you're there by yourself or with a friend listening. Welcome. This is Luci Dumas, the profitable photographer, and I am so thrilled to have my guest, Bryan Capricci, on the show today, and I will tell you who he is in just a sec. Just want to remind you that lucidumascoaching.com is where you could book a 20-minute chat if you want some support or just want to say hi and tell me something you appreciated about my show. And I think that's all I have for my little welcome. So here's what you need to know about Bryan Capricci. Although he's Canadian, so he doesn't speak with an Italian accent. He is an award-winning wedding and portrait photographer based out of Fonthill, Canada. So is that Ontario?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And he received his Master of Photography Arts designation by the PPOC. So I'm a master of the PPA organization. And so Bryan, you're a similar I don't know, you have a similar degree awarded from Canada. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Um, and he's one of the youngest Canadian photographers to receive this achievement. And this was in 2014. He's also the host of, uh, sorry, I'm making this noise because the Business of Photography podcast has over 2 million downloads. So, holy cow.
Mm.
And he's also the CEO and founder of Sprout Studio, which is a CRM built by photographers for photographers. So, welcome, Bryan. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always nice to have, I suppose, the tables turned or the microphones flipped, or I guess in both cases the microphone's in my face. But it's nice to be on this side of the interview sometimes.
Yeah. And it's nice to hear somebody who has this most perfect podcast voice on the other side of the mic. So, when
It's
I was,
all the microphone, Lucy.
what?
It's all the microphone. It's
That's
all the
right.
microphone.
That's right. It's like an AI where it takes us and we're talking really funny and it cleans
Right.
it for us.
That's right.
How did just a little quickie, how did you get into photography?
Yeah, I got into photography. I was 17 years old or 18 years old, and I was going to school for computer science. And being, the teenager that is in school for something to do with technology and computers, um, a local guy in our area knew my parents and needed help with some computer stuff. As you become the sort of go-to person for that. And so he approached me and said, "Hey, do you want a summer job doing this computer work?" He was a photographer.
Oh,
He was a sports photographer, actually, Lucy. So he was doing where you'd go to like a gymnastics event or a volleyball tournament, and he would sort of deploy a staff of photographers at the event. And he needed somebody to sort of own the computer side of things and take all the cards from the photographers and offload them and sell them to the parents. So I got into it doing that. And it sort of, I knew nothing about photography. I had never held a, SLR before in my life. But I got into it and it was just super interesting for me. And I loved the idea of making an impact through photography because that's what we were doing for these parents and for these kids at these events. This was like 2005, 2006. So sort of early-ish days digital. And we called what we did at the time, we called it digital memory preservation. That was like our fancy like way
ooh.
of making it like so I helped him create this whole suite of products that were digital because I was this like younger photographer or this younger business person and he was a sort of a photographer that had more experience than I. And so we made DVD menus and slideshows and image collages and all these like fancy things that you can do with technology that just were more difficult with analog photography. And that just sort of grew into this like interest for me. And
Hmm.
so him and I decided to go our own ways because I was loving the business side of that stuff, whereas he wanted to sort of stay perhaps a bit more traditional in doing, sports photography, what he was doing the traditional way. And so I started my own company called Memories in Motion. And the funny thing is that I registered the business name, I opened the bank account, I started with, logo and branding materials and all that. And then I walked into Henry's, a camera store, and I said, "Hey, so I own a photography business. I need to buy a camera, and then also need to learn how to use the camera." And so I kind of
I
stumbled
love it.
into it that way. It was like
Oh.
2006. I started as a photographer by pursuing the business opportunity first,
Mhm.
and then stumbling into the creative side of photography after. So that's kind of the long-winded story. And what's interesting about that is, because I've always looked at photography through the lens, pun intended, I suppose, of an entrepreneur, of like the business challenges that we can
Mhm.
solve as photographers. It always gave me a really interesting perspective, and it helped me achieve early success in my career, where I was, this 18, 19-year-old kid in university doing weddings, making six figures. And everyone around me is saying, "What are you doing?" Like, and as much as I'd love to say it was because I was a much better photographer, it's because I focused on the business side,
Mhm.
whereas everyone else focuses on just the photography side. So
Right. Yeah,
that's the long story.
I love, and thank you for that. Could be longer,
Yeah.
so thank you
Yeah.
for
We've got
um,
time.
one of the okay, I just interrupted my own self here. Um, I like that. That's a good story. Oh, what I was gonna say is over and over as I'm interviewing people in my podcast, smart photographers, smart business people mention that they're not the best photographer in the world. They're not the best even in their own town sometimes. It's it's about when we're competent, we need to be competent. When we take on a job, we need to be able to do it professionally, but it's about all the other things. For me, my
Mhm.
superpower is sales.
Mhm.
And I know that can be a barrier for people thinking it's a bad word and we don't want to be salesy. And for me, it's an art and it comes from feeling passionate that what I'm offering has such value to
Mhm.
people that it's imperative for me to do what it takes to sell them what I know they're going to treasure.
Mhm.
So yeah, I know that you have some great tips for people that aren't necessarily like that they need to learn that part and they learn
Yeah.
to manage it. But before I jump into that, um, in whenever I contact a potential guest and they say yes, there's a form they fill out, and one part I ask what their zone of genius is.
Mm.
And you put that zooming up to 10,000 feet to see the bigger picture and implementing that's a hard word, implementing systems and automation. So what do you mean by the 10,000-foot bigger picture?
I think a lot of the times entrepreneurs, and especially creative entrepreneurs, which is what I consider us as photographers, we need to split our energy between what I call CEO mode and worker bee mode.
Mm,
And I've taught a lot on this over the years. Basically, the difference between working on your business versus working in your business. And most photographers, as they get into photography, or even arguably as they've been successful in photography, they're spending far more time working in their business than they are working on their business. And there's a big difference because as you can um, be intentional about the work that you're doing in your business, as you can think about the work that you're doing in your business, as you can be strategic about that work, which is all the stuff that happens when you're in CEO mode, when you're working on your business. The more purposeful you can be in your business, the more successful you can be, the more productive you can be, the more deliberate you can be with the time that you're spending. And so, one of the things that I love to do and have helped photographers do, thousands and thousands of photographers, is to like look at things in those two distinct modes. One being CEO mode, working
mhm,
on your business, one being worker bee mode, working in your business. And I think sometimes, Lucy, photographers just need permission to step out of the busyness, to step out of the work and work on their business.
mhm,
And it's so easy to be like, oh, Brian, Lucy, that sounds wonderful, but like, have you seen my inbox? Or do you have any idea how many, weddings I have to edit or how many print orders I have to fulfill or whatever the case is? And the truth is that you're never going to run out of a to-do list. Like your to-do list as an entrepreneur and as a photographer is evolving and is never ending. And
Right.
so if you're always waiting to have an empty to-do list to step out, step up and work on your business, that time will never come.
Right.
And so when I say that's my superpower, it's just that's I operate in that space by default. By default, I go into a space where I can think strategically, I can think intentionally, I can zoom up to that sort of like 10,000-foot high perspective and look down at something that I'm working on, whether it's a project, whether it's a business, whether it's with another photographer, whether it's with my own business, Express Studio. I'm able to zoom up and do that. Whereas I think that's something that a lot of photographers struggle with. And so I love to help them do that.
Yeah, yeah. So I love what you said about that. I notice, I'm sure you notice this as well. There's a tendency to, when we have some of that quiet time because we don't have work, get creative, get active, launch marketing campaigns, go, 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 and then get the work and then get so busy that the
Mhm.
things we were doing,
Mhm.
we stop doing. So then
Yep.
once we've worked through those leads and all the things, then it's crickets again, and then we panic and start that cycle. So it's the feast or famine. Is that something you've noticed?
Yeah, like, I've definitely have noticed that when times get hard, when business gets low, when income drops, photographers sort of panic, and they get a little bit, frazzled trying to
Mhm.
trying to think about, "Oh my goodness, like, what can I do to get business now?" Challenge with that thinking from a very tactical standpoint is now is not the right time. Like that should have been a conversation you were having 3 months ago. And so,
Right.
if we do zoom up and zoom out and look at things, CEO mode and the different things that we need to be doing and spending our energy working on to work on our business are things that need to be intentional, that need to be planned, that need to be scheduled, and
Mhm.
need to be prioritized, and not just filling in the gaps if and when we happen to have white space, because
Okay.
that's the default.
Intentional, planned,
Prioritized?
prioritized. I'm writing this down for my
Yeah.
summary. Prioritized
I
and
I forget what the 4th one was. I know I said 4 things because I counted 4 on my hands, but
yeah,
we'll have to rewind the tape and, and then listen
yeah,
back to it
yeah.
because it sounded nice as I said it, didn't
I know. It's
it?
like one of my favorite books is The Four Agreements,
Yeah,
and on any given day, I can tell you 3, and
yeah,
never the same 3.
right, right.
Or sometimes when I'm trying to sleep, I try to remember the name of the 7 dwarfs, and
Mhm.
so, yes, intentional, plan, prioritize, and that other thing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. All right, so I know you have an article that I perused, to get ready for, the conversation today, and the article is about 14 steps to embrace automation
Mm,
in your business. So, um, let's go for it. So,
yeah.
it sounds to me like automation is like the secret sauce to working on our business and keeping all those plates spinning in the air. I don't know if you've ever seen
Mhm.
old-fashioned, variety shows like
Yep,
Ed Sullivan, where people get plates spinning, and once you get it spinning, if you keep it going, then you
that's
can
right.
pop another one. So, let me hear about that, Mr.
Let's do it.
Cappricci.
So, one of the things that I love to talk about, perhaps even before getting into the tactics, because here's the thing: we can link the article, folks can read it. It would be obviously wonderful, and I have a download that we can give. It's called the Winning Week Formula that'll help photographers listening sort of structure through this and workbook through this. It's completely free. So, tactically, that stuff is easy. I think one of the things that is most impactful and helpful to talk about is giving ourselves as photographers the permission to prioritize our time. Because
Mm,
really that's where it comes down to. a lot of the times as we start talking about, I've got this thing called the momentum method where we'll talk about, automation and streamlining and systematizing. And we kind of get into those things. And a lot of the times photographers can feel icky about that. They're like, well, it doesn't feel like me, or I need to be doing that, or I don't want to automate that, or I want to have control, or whatever the thousand excuses that they may have to not pursue those things. Um, a lot of the times, photographers fall into what I call the rocking horse analogy,
Mm.
which is where, if you think about a rocking horse, it's constantly moving, but it's never actually going anywhere.
Uh-huh.
And that is something that's really, really common and popular among entrepreneurs, I'd say, arguably among many people today, but photographers especially, where they like to be doing busy work. They like to feel like they're doing things that are moving the needle in their business. And that little like rush of whatever it is, dopamine or adrenaline or success or checking something off, like feels good in the moment because it's like accomplishing something. My question is always like, is it accomplishing the right thing? Are you doing the right thing? Are you moving the needle in the right direction? So I have this saying that I often use where I say small hinges move big doors.
Mm.
And basically what I mean when I say that is you can have, if you picture this like, massive big steel castle door and this thing weighs, 5,000 pounds. Well, that entire door can swing open on these like two or three little hinges. It doesn't need
Mm.
much. It just needs to have the right hinge with, the right characteristics and placed in the right way and balanced properly on that door, and the door will swing open no problem. And I think we can look at the work that we do in the same way. Whereas if we can pour our time and our energy and our focus into doing those right things, those right small hinges, then we can really move the needle. Whereas a lot of photographers will, tinker with their website or try and do their own SEO or spend all this time on, social media thinking that that's a marketing strategy, or they'll send an email to their list of, I mean, I see this all the time because we have Sprout. I see photographers who send email marketing campaigns to like thousands and thousands of just like everybody on their email list, and they're not targeted, they're not intentional, they're not deliberate or thought out. They're kind of just spamming their clients, and then they wonder why their emails aren't landing in the inbox or landing in the
Mhm.
spam folder. Well, it's because you're sending spam. It's like, it's
Mhm.
as simple as that.
Yeah.
So
I
we
have a
do these things. Yeah, sorry, go
uh,
on.
so I have and um I know why I'm just blanking out. Okay, I have a friend who's a photographer,
Yep.
and we were chatting, and she was really disappointed because she sent out a mailer to 50 people
Hmm.
and an email and got zero response.
Hmm.
And I was like, dude or dudette, mailing is a big, you know, like if you get 1% from mailing and you send that 3 times and,
Hmm.
then that can accomplish something. But one, one set of postcards sent out to 50 people,
Right.
unless they're such targeted people, um, is to me one of those things you're talking about, which
Yeah.
is it's not moving any big door, you
Right.
know, and those people may not have ever received anything from you before, uh,
Hmm.
may not know or remember who you are or why they would want it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's so how do you know what to do to
Well, I
move?
mean, that's the $1,000,000 question. It's
Yeah.
um, I have a whole formula that I've developed and I've taught many times over the years called the growth potential indicator score. It's probably more than we want to get into in this particular interview and conversation, but the sort of crux of it is how do you really look at and define like a positive business success? How do you look at growth in your business as a photographer? And when you ask that question, it kind of comes back to a few things. Well, are you getting new leads from it? Are you getting more of those leads to book, or are you getting more of those leads to book for more money? Or are you getting existing clients to spend more money? I mean, really, a lot of like those four things are some of the core when you really, really boil it down, those are the core successes. That's how we measure success and as a photographer.
So number one, are you getting new leads?
Yep.
Number two, are you getting good bookings? Yeah.
Are more of them converting? So if you have 10 leads, if you can convert 20% of them instead of 10% of them, that would be considered a positive, success from a growth tactic standpoint.
That's number 2.
Yep.
Number 3 is, are you getting,
Are they booking for a higher dollar value? So
yeah.
if you can book the same percentage of them, but you can book them for higher amounts, that's great.
And then 4 was our repeat people
That's right.
booking
Like
for,
existing clients, are you increasing the value and the average spend of an existing client?
yeah, those are
So if you
great.
really look at those four things, like those are really the inarguable biggest drivers of growth and success as a photographer. I mean, there's obviously a whole other bunch of other things that you could look at as secondary. Is your work improving? Are you learning something? Are you spending less time doing the same work? There's other things that you can look at, but really those four things. And so what I often will do, and this growth potential indicator score calculation and formula kind of does this, but it's a good mental um, exercise that photographers can go through by just hearing this, is any opportunity that you're considering pursuing. Maybe you're thinking, hey, should I do a trade show? Should I do this mailer this one
Mhm,
time to 50 people? Should I send this email campaign? Should I revise my client booking experience? Like should I start using a system like Sprout to like make that more streamlined? When you're looking at any of those things, you ask yourself, how likely is it to have an impact on these four things? And
mm,
you kind of rank them, from let's call it 1 to 10, 1 to 5, whatever rubric you want to use. And then when you take all those things and sort of put it on a piece of paper in front of you, it typically becomes pretty clear like, oh, this thing, tinkering with my SEO, or this thing um, is not really going to have as big of an impact as I thought it would,
mhm,
when we can look at it objectively. So really what it does is it takes the emotion and the internal want and desire to pursue something, this rocking horse analogy, and it takes it out of the equation, because you can put all of these opportunities and all of these potential pursuits on sort of a common denominator.
mhm. Yeah, I often with my coaching clients, well, I always have them fill out what I call a time card
Hmm.
before our next conversation, in addition to a few other questions. And and I separate it into how much time are you spending in marketing, working directly with clients, doing business work, and that other fourth thing, um, office. Well, anyway, I'm always more interested in the marketing.
Yep.
And and so when I ask them, well, what did you do marketing? So often they'll say, oh, I did social media things. They did a blog, they dabbled in this, they're trying to, all these things that
Hmm.
think, well, is that what you just said? Is that getting business through the door?
Right.
Or would it be more powerful to, I don't know, set up a booth at a farmer's market in the middle of your ideal clients and do a giveaway that
Hmm.
directly that day can get you hot leads if it's done right.
Yep.
And I've never done a farmer's market, but if it's, getting our stuff in front of the right people and getting them an opportunity to connect with us, and not, to me, search engine can be good, but we're in competition with everybody else
Hmm.
doing that. So, I love what you're saying. Am I on track? Is that kind of the questions
A
we're
hundred
asking
percent. Yeah.
ourselves?
I mean, it gives photographers a tool and a framework to just take their own biases, to take their own
Mhm,
preferences, to take their own tendency to spend time, perhaps unnecessarily, on things that they think are important, but
mhm,
maybe when you look at it from an objective standpoint, aren't really all that important.
right. So it's kind of like okay, do it like a machine gun. We're not killing people with this machine gun.
Right.
So just don't want to,
Yeah, it's
but
very
it's like
much
a
like
machine gun versus sharpshooting.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very target, like a laser focused approach to the way that we spend our time. And
Mhm,
one of the side effects, Lucy, like when I talk about this stuff, I'll often enter this conversation. In fact, I was just in Santa Barbara in California speaking at a conference there. Um, I'll approach it from the standpoint of what I call the lie of busy, which is
Mm,
how do we create more appropriate order and balance between our business and what we do in our business and our personal lives? Because one of the unfortunate side effects that I've seen far more times than I'd like to admit is that photographers pour themselves and identify so closely, like from an identity standpoint, with being a photographer, that they end up sacrificing the happiness and the time that they spend with their own family to photograph other families.
right.
And it's really unfortunate that we end up starting a business and becoming an entrepreneur typically for the freedom and the fulfillment and the joy that all that can bring, but we lose sight of that somewhere along the way. And
Mhm.
so when I teach on the live busy, I'll enter this, topic of automation and systems and all of this, like from a softer lens of being like, yeah, the benefit of all these things is that like you can actually run a really successful photography business working 20 hours a week. Imagine what that would
Mhm.
look like for your life and for your family and for your kids or your friends or your spouse or whatever that looks like for you and whatever personal happiness. Maybe you want to travel the world or you want to camp or you want to spend time. I'm a runner. You want to spend time running. You want to spend time biking, whatever the case is. Like you can do these other things and still put food on the table with your camera. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to do
Mhm.
that. So when you, not only are you more effective with your time, but you need less time. And
Right.
you can be like super successful when you're intentional.
Right. Right. It makes me think about how that expression, if you want something done, find a busy person.
Mm,
And what I know about those kinds of people who are busy, but they're getting things done, is that when they focus on a task, they focus on it and get it done.
mhm.
They're not waking up just dabbling in a little of this and a little of that, which
Yep.
I've been guilty of. And
Mm,
so sometimes it's recreation, but yeah, I know what you're talking about is we really can, when things are done well and effectively, we that's the luxury of being an entrepreneur is we can
mhm.
write our own program.
Yeah.
So what are some of those 14
Yeah.
tips? Or
Yeah.
because it's good thoughts, but like how the heck
Mm,
do we do that? One
mm.
of the things, I was married at one time to a man who he was in charge of the production control of the split ring cell of solar turbines. And
Wow.
when he explained what he
You
does,
lost me at husband, but
yeah, 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 once, uh,
yeah.
and when he explained it to me, when you're building an engine, there's all these parts and pieces and bits, and they all have to be assembled before you put it together. They don't just get a big pile of bits and then
Right.
build an engine. They have, so he's in the split ring cell, whatever that is. And his job was production control, which means he had to get he had to get this manufacturer to send this thing, and he had to get these people in place to assemble that, and all these little parts in a timely manner so that when they're building this turbine engine, his split ring is ready to go. And I
Mhm.
realized, oh, I'm in production control
Mm.
because when I do a job, once it's ordered, well, first of all, after I photograph, then there's editing, and then there's this, and there's that, then they order, then there's all these processes and assembly, and there's a book, designing a book and such. And just that, like his whole job is that, but that's only a piece of what we do. So,
Mm.
whew, it can be sorry. Um, It's a lot. Okay, back to
Mhm.
I ask you a question and then I talked. So, how do we get a handle on these things?
So there's um, a framework that I've sort of built, developed, learned. I now teach. And it's called what you referred to earlier, Lucy, which is the momentum method. Basically 3 questions that you're going to ask yourself. And I'm going to read these because this is one that there is a system for it. And so I want to make sure I get it right and that we
Okay.
can repeat it and that listeners can remember it. The first question that you're going to ask yourself, and this is a question that you're going to ask whenever you have sort of like something in front of you that you have to do, or a job to be done, or a task to be done, or work that needs to be completed. First question is, can this be done without my direct involvement?
Mm,
And if so, then we're going to go ahead and automate it. Now, if it needs your direct involvement, so if we want to pass through that, the next question is, can I do this faster with less work? And if so, then we're going to what I call accelerate it. And if the answer is no to that one, the question is, can this be simplified and standardized to reduce friction? And if so, we're going to align it. Those are the 3 questions. Is first you want to see, can you automate it? And then you want to see what can you do to accelerate it and have it be less weight to carry. And then the third you're going to do, if you can't do either of those, is align it. And really there's one in front of all of them. And this is an important one, which is really hard, but I usually talk about this before I even get into this, which is, does this need to get done at all? And if
mhm.
no, we're just going to not do it and say
Right.
no. So really, when we kind of pass it through those filters, it gives us a framework to be really intentional about the work that we're doing. And then when we are doing manual work, we know it's because, well, it passed through this set of filters and it is work that I have to do manually. But I think that you'll find, especially in today's day and age, with like the tools that are out there, with the AI tools that are out there, with systems like Sprout that can help you automate so much of your business, like so much work that we do today as photographers can kind of be like checked off on that first box, and we can kind of, yeah, pass it through this automation filter and really be hands off on a big part of what we do as photographers.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's look at something really simple,
Specific.
like invoice reminders, right? One of the
Okay.
things I see a lot of the times is photographers just feel um, like they're buried underneath this like manual system of who's paid me and how much have they paid me and when did they pay me and when's the next invoice due. I need to remind them. Did I remind them yet? Did I forget if they mailed the check? Did they send it on Zelle? Did I get it? Was it an e-transfer?
Mhm.
Have I invoiced for that? Oh no, I did the work. I haven't invoiced for it yet. Like, it's this whole like monster of thoughts. I've seen so many photographers, they're just like buried behind that like bookkeeping of just invoicing and invoice reminders. And my question is then, like, why don't you just have a system where you can send invoices and it automatically reminds your clients and sends confirmations and sends reminders and follows up if it's past due and all of that. That's a really easy thing that you can do. There's no reason, like, first question, does that need my direct involvement? There's no reason that you need to be the bill collector in your business. Like,
Right.
you can have a system that does that automatically. So why not use that as like
Mhm.
as the first
Right.
example?
So what's an example of something that maybe doesn't really need to be done at all that people put time and effort into?
I mean, that's a good question. I think it depends on I don't think that there's a broad answer because I think that would be
Mhm.
unfair, but I think that it really depends on the photographer, their market, the kind of photography they do, what their clients are like, where they are, all of that. I would argue to an extent, you could like ask the question like, do I need to be spending as much time as I am on social media, doing organic social media? I'm a big fan of it. Don't get me wrong. I think it can have a great place
Mhm.
in a solid marketing strategy. But I think this like doom scrolling, this like random posting, this sharing as an extension of your portfolio without a guided strategy with that is really kind of like, flushing time down the toilet
Right.
type of thing. So that would be something that I'd argue and say, I mean, do you really need to do that? I don't know. Think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. When I decided to become a coach about 10 years ago, so I'm a lifelong learner. The first
Mm,
thing I did was find out who was teaching how do you coach and how do you attract clients.
right.
And that the first one, her name was Debbie Allen. Her business is called the Highly Paid Expert, and she gives lots of lists of things you can do. But
Mm,
she's good about saying, you don't need to do all of that.
Mm,
And then it just seemed like these other teachers and programs, I felt like I had to do, like, I've got to do a webinar, but first I have to promote
mhm,
this other thing that's this thing, so that this and that and this, and eventually people will, I don't know, buy my program.
right.
And at a certain point, I really questioned, after several years and exhausting efforts. And yes, I've kept booked and I love coaching, but I started to look at, do I need to do these things? And some of them, and they weren't always paying off. In
Right.
fact, quite frequently, it was like pushing the rock up the hill. So
Mhm.
yeah, I've had those recent times when I discovered the things that specifically get me in front of people that I can possibly help, and, and putting the efforts in that. So yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
I think it's like it's even easier now, like with social media and in this like comparison culture that we seem to live in, where if you're a photographer, like you're now seeing not only what other local photographers are doing, but you're seeing what like every photographer in the world is able to do. You're watching
Right.
and learning from the best photographers in the world, and oftentimes that can lead you to a place where you feel like what you're doing isn't enough or what you're doing isn't good enough, or that, oh, this photographer launched this mini session and this photographer is doing this trade show and this photographer is doing this
Mhm.
style shoot and this photographer is teaching at this conference and this photographer is attending this conference, and you look at all of these things and you're like, well, I should be doing all those too, and that's where like I wouldn't make that jump in your head. Say that
Right.
just because someone else is doing it means that you should be doing it. So you
Right.
need to ask yourselves these questions and say, am I doing the right things? Am I spending my time and my energy and my money doing the right things? Um, and if none of that has any kind of strategy based in it, based on your own business and your own clients and your own market and your own goals, then I would just say like, out of the get go, say no, unless you know it's going to be worthwhile pursuing.
Right. Right. I think networking has been one of those um, questions I never quite asked myself when I
Mm,
was part of some networking groups that, that were intentional, that you meet for breakfast or you meet for
hmm
lunch. And I wasn't networking in a way that was getting people to contact me. That
right.
there's just showing up, sitting, giving your
hmm
testimonial, giving out referrals for some businesses, like a hairdresser or
Yep.
insurance or something, can be great, but a high ticket item, high dollar
hmm
photographer, um, the networking with people who can introduce me to the people and being much more targeted. Like when I did weddings, I was very targeted in networking without knowing that I was doing all these things right. It just felt natural to build relationships with people whose products and clients were in alignment with me. So yeah, there's so many things we can do. I think also, and I'm just jumping, but I think being drawn to the things that we enjoy, like
hmm
if, for example, if I'm going to a networking group, but it's like, oh, I gotta go again, and this and that, and I show up not with joy, and I don't like the very many people in the group. I'm not saying that that was true for me, but really questioning, is this fun?
Right.
Is it because doing things without the spirit behind it, um,
Mm,
to me, can just be, just like making noise, but not, we're not a magnet for success, and we're not filled with enthusiasm and
right.
ideas if it just feels like we have to do this. Ugh.
Right.
Thoughts
Well, and
on
I think the reverse is actually also true, where photographers will like doing something. Like, for example,
that?
maybe I'll make some photographers upset by sharing this, but photographers love the idea of styled shoots.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that there's not a place for styled shoots, and I'm not saying that styled shoots are a waste of time, but just because you love doing it doesn't mean that it's going to be a positive ROI or
Right.
ROT, return on your time.
Right.
And so the reverse can be true where if you look at everything only through the lens of joy, you might be led to make a lot of the wrong decisions
Yeah,
of spending
absolutely.
your time doing the wrong things. And that's why I love that framework of like, okay, like, what are the actual outcomes I'm hoping for on this from like a metrics and a KPI and a measurement standpoint? And let's use that as a really good measuring stick.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm with you on that, because there are a lot of things that I've done in my 40 years that weren't the parts of the business I really enjoyed,
Mhm.
but because it was attached to the things that I love to do, which is
Mm.
find great clients, build a relationship, create beautiful products for
Yep.
them go home with 3 to 5 to 7 wall portraits. Then there's all these things that I do that aren't super fun, but that are
Mhm.
keeping me moving to the goal of the fun things, or time off for the fun things that are not about the business.
Right. Well,
So,
and I think that's an interesting conversation because I think I'll just come right out and say it and say like sometimes well, not sometimes. I guarantee there are going to be things that you have to do when you as a photographer that don't like completely light you up. Like
mhm,
it's just that's a reality. That's a reality. It's going to happen. You're not going to love 100% of the work that you do in your business as a photographer. Now, you have three options. Three options when you encounter this beast, right? This thing that you don't love to do. Option number one, you just choose not to do it. Okay, fair, maybe an option. Number two, just do it, still hate it, but do it and find the joy in doing it. Or number three, try and find a way to collaborate. And collaborate could look like outsourcing, it could look like a true collaboration, it could look like hiring, up for interpretation. But find
mhm,
someone that does love that thing and collaborate on it. I'll give a perfect example. A lot of photographers don't love doing their own bookkeeping. That's one thing I absolutely hate doing. Hate
mhm,
doing. It's my least favorite thing to do. Now, I could either just not do it. Well, the CRA wouldn't be super happy if I just didn't file my taxes. That's not
right.
really an option for me as
Yeah,
a photographer.
yeah,
Um, I could just do it begrudgingly and do it anyways. Certainly an option.
mhm,
And I could find the joy in doing it and just be like, hey, wait, I got to do this in order to run a business. It is what it is. Or I can collaborate. I chose number three. I hired a bookkeeper. I hired an accountant. I meet with them once a month and they help me do the thing. They love doing these things. Super weird. I don't understand how they love it, but they
I
do.
know,
That's okay. So they love it. It's their energy source. It's not my energy source. And so I'm going to hire them to do that stuff for me and with me.
right,
So that's just really the reality of running a business is you're not going to love all the things that you do. And so you can either just not do it anyways, or collaborate.
right. The first thing that I always recommend to my clients, uh, and most of them are women, the coaching clients, is to get a housekeeper.
Mm,
Paying somebody 100, $200 every other week or once a week or whatever, so that energetically you're not getting drained. Now,
mhm,
some people love to wash dishes, but even if you love something, if it's not helping create what is most important,
mm,
we got to let some of those things go too.
yep.
Anyway, I don't love cleaning house.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I've always had someone else help me with that, because if I'm averaging 3, 4, $500 an hour in my photography, what is the issue about letting somebody spend 4 hours or whatever, doing what they love to do? I love
Hmm.
you saying that creating opportunities for other people to thrive and succeed by
Yes.
supporting us
Yep.
is also a contribution to the world, I think. So
Totally
we
agree.
are
I think the other interesting thing, just to kind of put a bow on this one, because it does talk to automation and outsourcing and all of this, is all of those tools are really ultimately only useful if you're going to make use of the time that you save by doing it.
right.
Because you could look at, like, you could take this whole conversation like, oh, I mean, Lucy said to outsource my housekeeping. Okay, amazing. Brian said to outsource my bookkeeping. Amazing. So therefore, I'm going to outsource those things and then be a slob and just scroll Instagram instead of doing those things, or I'm going to sit and watch a Netflix, series instead. It's
Right.
like not exactly what we're saying. What we're saying is like spend your time in your business doing the things that matter and that do require your time, and outsource, automate, systematize, streamline the other things.
Right.
And it's
Right.
only when you make use of that time that you save by doing that outsourcing and streamlining and automating that
Mhm.
you can really start to make a business that runs itself.
Good point. Well,
Yep.
we are almost out of time, speaking of time. And so I have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
First of all, can you quickly define CRM? I'm
Yeah.
sure there's people like, who doesn't know what that is? But I'm sure there are people that are like, what is a CRM after
Yeah.
all?
So CRM is a customer relationship management tool. So basically, it is a tool that allows you to take in clients, communicate with them, serve them, um, and keep things organized in your business.
Okay. And so why is Sprout Studio so awesome as a CRM?
So Sprout is a CRM is about 20% of what Sprout is, which is like the fun thing. So a CRM, managing clients, taking leads and doing all those things is something photographers need to do. Sprout also allows photographers to create galleries and send them to their clients, and
Oh,
to do email marketing, and to do email blasts, and drip campaigns and lead nurturing. It allows photographers to do scheduling, so you don't have to go back and forth and say, hey, are you available next Tuesday at 8 o'clock? No, I'm not available. How's 7? Oh no, seven's too
yeah.
early. How about Wednesday? Like that back and forth is unnecessary. It allows photographers to proof albums with their clients. They can get specific feedback on specific pages of the books and the work and the art and the cards that they design for their clients. And so much more. You do questionnaires, you can do bookings, you can do invoices, you can do contracts. You can automate and do like all the things we're talking about here. You can automate your entire client experience in Sprout. And so by having all of these tools that you need to run your business in one place, it allows you to stay more organized. It allows you to give your clients the best experience that you possibly can. It makes you look professional and on the ball and on top of things.
Mhm.
And it just serves your clients really well. And it sort of allows you to do those things without having to keep those plates spinning in the air.
So it's more, I call it a business management program,
Yeah.
BMP.
Yeah, totally. We call it like a studio management suite would be sort of like what else we could call it, because the CRM is
Mhm.
just like a part of what you can do in Sprout.
Right.
But it's just
Right.
it's a tool, it's a web-based software that allows photographers to log in from anywhere in the world on any device in the world, and run their business and give their clients a really cohesive experience.
Yeah. So I know you have a gift,
Yep.
and so what is that gift? How do they get that?
Yep. So there's a workbook that we have. It's called the Winning Week Formula, and it kind of is a guided sort of homework book through like both teaching and then also executing a lot of these things that we talked about today in terms of ordering your time and ordering your priorities and putting things on your calendar and making sure that you're working on the right things in your business, and just helping educate photographers on why these are so important, but then also give them the tools to actually execute them. So this workbook and this whole program, Winning Week Formula, is completely free. And Lucy, you have the link for that. It's just getsproutsstudio.com/winning-week.
Great. And I know you're offering my listeners a 20% subscription discount.
Yeah, for Sprout. So with the link that
For Sprout.
that you have, so everyone gets a free trial with Sprout. So you can hop in. There's no credit card. So if anyone's interested in checking it out and wants to take it for a spin and see what it would be like for them to use Sprout in their business, whether they're not using a CRM and a tool currently, or if they're looking to switch, there's lots of tools and onboarding and help and documentation to help them get in and get using it quickly. So hop in, try out the trial, and if it works for you and if you like it, then if you've used Lucy's link, then you can get savings off of your plan as well.
Great, great. Okay, so I love to give my guest an opportunity. Oh, first of all, how do people get in touch with you if they want to just ask a question,
Um,
make a comment?
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
if they wanna, find us on Instagram at Get Sprout Studio or just myself, you can link my personal profile as well, Lucy, in the notes for this. Feel free to send me a DM there, or if you wanna send me an email, it's just brian@sproutstudio.com.
Great.
That might be the best way.
Okay. So last word. What would be either something that you'd be like, oh, I wish I'd have mentioned this, or this is what I want to leave you with, these thoughts?
So I would say there's this idea called the paradox of the growing heap. And I want to maybe just share this with you really quickly and with listeners. A lot of the things that we talked about today are actionable. There's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of content. And I'm sure, Lucy, on all of your podcasts, there's a lot of content, a lot of ideas, and a lot of
Mhm.
actionables, a lot of things that photographers could do. And my encouragement would be, if we look through this sort of analogy or this story of paradox of the growing heap, if I were to give you a coin right now, a coin in your hand, would you call yourself rich? The answer, of course, is no. One coin would make you rich. If I give you a second coin, would that make you rich? No, of course it would make you rich. If I gave you a third coin, would that make you rich? Of course not. But if I give you coin and coin and coin and coin again, eventually at some point you're going to have enough coins that you're going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm now rich." But it wasn't just one coin that made you rich. It was the consistent addition of one coin to another coin to another coin that made you rich. And so although one coin is inconsequential and doesn't really make a difference, it's the consistency of adding one coin to one coin that does make a difference. And so much like the paradox of the growing heap, these ideas, these action items, these tactics, these ideas, these lessons that we talk about in this podcast and others, no one of them is going to be this magic bullet to make you succeed as a photographer. But if you can commit yourself to consistently adding those actions, implementing these ideas and implementing these tools and taking action in your business, time and time and time again, much like the growing heap, you will eventually become rich.
Fantastic. Brian, I'm so happy that we had to reschedule a few times, and it was all worth it to wait for this awesome hour chatting with you. Thank you so, so much
Oh,
for
it's my
being a
pleasure.
guest. I know people are taking notes like mad, and this is, I can hear the like little brainstorms bursting as we speak. So thank you, Brian.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Lucy.
You're welcome. All right, here we are, just the two of us. You with your wherever you're listening or watching, and me in my room. Wasn't that great? He has the best voice, doesn't he, for our podcasts? So I'm trying to think how to summarize this because I took just a big pile of notes. So he talked about how we need to split our energy between being a CEO and an entrepreneur, and that we have to remember to be the CEO and work on our business and to be intentional, have things planned, have priorities, give ourselves permission to work smarter, not harder. Um, and he talked about the rocking horse analogy, where on a rocking horse, you're doing a lot of things, but you're not going anywhere. And so he said this cool thing I've never heard: small hinges move big doors. That we need to do the things that are actually moving us forward. And the questions, or the formula he has, there are 4 questions that we need to ask ourselves with anything that we're doing. Are we getting new leads? Are we getting good bookings from those leads? Are they consistently booking for a higher dollar amount? And then are existing clients spending more than they did before? So growth, 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 growth. And we talked about the lie of being busy, and that photographers often sacrifice their entire lives for the business and for helping other people, and that we can create a world where our lives are our priority and our businesses support that. I like that. And then his momentum method, he says, first we have to ask, can this task be done without my direct involvement? And if so, let's automate it. Number 2, we ask ourselves, is there a way to do this faster with less work? And 3, can it be simplified? And 4, does this need to be done at all? So that that is a little quickie summary, and be sure to check out his podcast as well. He's got so many great episodes, and that is all, my darlings, for now. So thank you again for being an important part of this show, because if no one listens, I'm not going to do it anymore. And it means a lot to me when you just share a quick email or DM or on the Instagram post or Facebook, just commenting what you appreciated about an episode and sharing this with your friends. That would mean a lot as well. So that's it. Thank you. Love you. Hug you. Bye.